This
Mr.
conference will now be recorded.
Mr. Farrar will invite us to his retreat in the woods, and we'll have a Walden experience, I'm pretty sure. Good morning, everyone. That's just a bit of humor to get us off on a good start. My name is Leanne Thompson. I'm the vice chair of this governing body of Clatsop County. I'm chairing the meeting this morning. Commissioner Quila, the chair, isn't able to be with us. So here's what I'd say. This is a work session of the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and to listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public who do wish to address the board are welcome to do so, very welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings held twice monthly. So, clerk of the board, do we need to call the roll for this one? I see the other commissioners are aboard. What do you think?
We normally do not for work sessions, but whatever you prefer is fine.
Okay, I see smiling faces of my other colleagues. Good morning. Good morning, commissioners. Glad to have you all here this morning. Well, then let's get right into it. We're going to deal with topic 1, which is the draft Planning Commission bylaws. And I'm also happy to see members of the Planning Commission here as well. Let's proceed. Director Henriksen, I bet this is yours.
You're going to hear a lot from me today, but hopefully not too much. Thank you, commissioners. Again, for the record, Gail Henriksen, Community Development Director. Our first item of business today is to review the proposed revisions to the Planning Commission bylaws. These changes were initially drafted and by staff and presented to the board at a work session back in June of last year. And we made several recommended revisions, including changes to scope of work, such as removing the variance review from the Planning Commission to make that consistent with what's required in our zoning code. There was a proposal to establish a term limit of 2 full terms or 10 years, depending upon whether or not a member had been appointed to fill a vacant seat. We also included some draft language that more fully explain the roles and responsibilities of the chair, the vice chair, and the staff in terms of the Planning Commission, established a level of conduct that would be expected, and then some other changes to update code citations. And then the Planning Commission and the board did hold their first joint meeting back in July, on July 20th of last year. These proposed changes were again discussed at that meeting. And following that meeting on September 14th, the Planning Commission did a more formal review of the proposed bylaw revisions. And some of the recommended changes from that Planning Commission meeting including adding language that no county commissioner or community development staff would be eligible to serve on the Planning Commission, that there be some clarification between what constitutes an excused or unexcused absence, and that preferably there should not be term limits, but if there were to be term limits enacted, that it should be clarified whether or not that limit is a lifetime limit, or if a planning commissioner could serve, take a break, and then come back and complete another term. The Planning Commission at that same meeting also discussed some additional language changes or just general topics, including the difficulty of recruiting members to serve not only on the Planning Commission, but generally all of our advisory committees across the county, to perhaps clarify how we replace a chair on the Planning Commission if that person is unable to serve his or her term. There was some discussion about when we actually begin our member appointments, which start on July 1st, but the election for chair and vice chair is actually held at the first meeting of the calendar year. And so there was some discussion about whether those 2 dates should be coordinated or not. And then finally, there was a discussion about continuing some form of hybrid and in-person virtual meetings as we move forward, if we ever leave pandemic. And I think part of that's actually been addressed in either through state rulemaking or state law at this point, that we will be required to have that virtual hybrid in-person format. So today is really a day for the board and the Planning Commission to go back through the proposed bylaw revisions. There may be other changes that you may want to discuss, related to how bylaws are drafted and amended and that approval process, or other topics that you may want to also consider. And at this point, I conclude my presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, let's hear from you first and then hear from the Planning Commission members. So who'd like to offer comment from their point of view as a seat on the Commissioner Webb? I'm not surprised. Please lead us off.
I have what I have is a question. There is a list here in the staff report. How are we going to address these? Are we just going to take the suggestions one by one, or what are you kind of looking at from us? I don't know who that question is.
Give it to the chair or the presiding officer in this case. Sure. Let's let me ask first if there are questions or exceptions, because if there are questions or exceptions from my colleagues on the County Board of Commissioners, I'd like to hear those first, and then we'll go from there. But if you, since you have the floor, have had the floor, been granted the floor, do you have questions or exceptions about any of the items on, they're all on page 3 that I see that the Planning Commission expressed, but if you have a response to those or any others, I assume that's agreeable. Commissioner Webb, what do you think? That's agreeable. All right. Commissioner Bangs, you had your hand up.
I just had a question. I know we briefly discussed with the redistricting process of a potential of increasing the number of potential planning commission volunteers that reside within the bounds of a municipality. And I just didn't know where we were going to go. Are we going to continue to discuss that, Director Henriksen, or is that something that we're just moving past?
So the board had expressed an interest in waiting to appoint planning commission candidates, which we'll talk about later in this meeting, until after the redistricting map had been approved, and that was completed at your meeting last week on January 12th. It's really the board's direction as to how you want to change the composition of the membership on the Planning Commission. There are some requirements that are spelled out in state statute that we do need to abide by, such as what types of professions can be on the Planning Commission and in what quantity. So we do need to be mindful of that.
So Commissioner Bangs, I'm going to respond to that. I have no desire to increase the proportion of Planning Commission members allowed to be from a municipality. I like that we have 2. I think that gives us interaction. I think that gives us specific expertise. This is the Clatsop County, and I think the rural unincorporated areas of Clatsop County should have the loudest voice or the most representation on this body. So no, I don't have any interest in doing that. Okay, others may feel differently than that, but that's my current feeling on this issue. Senator, you know, have we been replacing Senator Johnson? Yes, we have. Commissioner Toyoka, did you have a question or a comment?
Just a comment more than a question is, this is possibility of hybrid. I think we should definitely have hybrid virtual meetings, not only for Planning Commission, but for, the County Commission. And it just allows for greater viewership of everyone in our community, allows for greater participation and transparency. And I just like the fact that, if people in our community or constituents are interested in the process, they can hop on, listen, not have to go to a location. I think having that technology in the virtual environment available allows us to have a greater dissemination of information at all times. And I really hope we can move to that for all of our meetings, whether it's Planning Commission, County Commission, and all.
Thank you, sir. I agree. And as Director Henriksen points out, there's a state law now. This is required. And number two, it's great for the carbon footprint. Not that internet doesn't create a carbon footprint, but in terms of vehicle emissions, fabulous. So it's a win-win in my book. So we'll continue that. Are there other county commissioners who want to address any of the iterations on page 3 of our packet of the suggestions about the composition of these bylaws for a planning commission? Okay, well then I would I'd talk to these a little bit. When we look at what needs to be in there and what doesn't, Director Henriksen, I didn't hear you say iterate the point, add language that allows a planning commission member to be removed for 2 or more unexcused absences. My concern is that the person filling the seat really fills the seat and really honors the obligation that they take on by their appointment to the Planning Commission. So having served on the Planning Commission for a number of years before I was a county commissioner, I have some on-the-ground experience with how that body has operated. Of course, I haven't been present during the 7+ years I've been a county commissioner, but drawing on that previous experience, I had that desire. I see that the Planning Commission wants to add language saying no current county commissioner or county or community development staff may serve on the Planning Commission. So Director Henriksen, or perhaps this is a question for County Council, is there anything legal to guide us in this in terms of state law or county ordinance? County Council, I see your screen lit up. Please speak to me.
And so, can you all hear me? First of all, I'm having problems with my mic. Okay. So thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So there are certainly bylaws that, as you point out, there are statutes that reflect on the Planning Commission. I'd have to go back and review them to see if they speak to vacancies. I'm not sure, but I can probably do that while you all are meeting, and so I can look that up. There also, as you point out, Chair or Vice Chair Thompson, there are probably some ordinances. So if you give me a couple minutes, I probably can have an answer to you in a few minutes.
Right,
Yes,
because, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I can actually answer, I think, most of your questions. So it's
Fabulous.
ORS 215.030, which specifies the membership of the Planning Commission. Subsection 6 says that the governing body may designate 1 or more officers of the county to be non-voting members of the commission. So that, I think, addresses the question about an appointment of a current county commissioner. Normally, staff is the liaison to the commission. I don't even think that it's not addressed in this ORS, but I don't think staff would even be eligible to be on the Planning Commission, nor do I think that we would want to.
Great, thank you. Yes, staff. You're having enough fun already, I'm pretty sure. So let me just say, I'm not in favor of this prohibition because I remember when Commissioner Birkby sat in the District 5 County Commissioner seat, and she was a liaison, as I recall, informal or actually. But in years past, we have had a non-voting member from the County Board of Commissioners who has participated as a liaison from the county commissioners, the governing body, to the Planning Commission. I actually thought that was a good idea. The reason it stopped, in my recollection, which is not infallible, I'll add, but in case someone knows better, correct me. But the reason that stopped was the concern that matters may come before the planning commission that would then later come to the county board of commissioners, and that somehow may taint the process. So I think it's actually, I think what happened, colleagues, and I'm speaking to the planning commission and the county board of commissioners now, I think what happened was our paths diverged, and I think we were not communicating adequately with each other. And there's no fault or blame or anything else like that. What I'm simply noting is a deficiency of communication that would have made all of this smoother, because we would have been communicating more effectively with each other. So I am not in favor of that. County commissioners, do you have a response to my thoughts and my response to this item on the agenda, that first one? Commissioner Webb?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about what you were objecting to, Chair.
If I may clarify.
Said that you didn't agree with. I'm sorry, what is it that you don't agree with? I just wasn't clear.
Sure thing. Language be added stating that no current county commissioner or community development staff may serve on the planning commission. So that in my mind says there'll be no liaison, which I think I don't think that's au contraire would be just a dandy idea. A non-voting.
That's not how I interpret that. Serving on the planning commission, I think, is different from being a liaison. You know, I think many of us serve on other groups as a liaison to the board, but we don't have voting rights on those groups. So I think it would be perfectly appropriate for someone to be appointed as a liaison, especially if the commission feels that it would help communication between the board and the planning commission. I think that could be a very cool idea.
Okay, so 2 considerations, voice and vote. So this is where we go to county, well, probably Director Henriksen. If the issue is voice and vote, do you have an idea that relates to this proposal for a prohibition?
Well, I go back to the ORS, which cites that you as the governing body can designate one or more officers of the county to be non-voting members of the commission. And ORS is very clear in that it's a non-voting representation.
But it is a member rather than a liaison, Commissioner Webb.
Correct.
What this request from the Planning Commission is that we go beyond the state statute and say we can't be a member. And I would object to any constraint like that on the members of the governing body. So we wouldn't be able to vote, but we would have an actual position, which is stronger than a liaison. So I'm for strengthening the governing body for us to be more effective, because we're the ones who are directly accountable to the voters. So Commissioner Bangs, what's your response to that?
I support you and your thought process. I do feel that it should be a non-voting member, obviously, as per state law. But I just think about, you know, in some years, how difficult it is to find planning commissioners to serve, that this is a good opportunity if a community or area potentially is feeling underrepresented. It leaves the door open. Not that we're gonna, you know, step right through that door, but at least it leaves the door open. And I fully support, you know, just sticking with state law. I don't think that we need to go above and beyond.
Planning Commissioner Gardner, I'm going to go through the county commissioners first, and then I'll come to you. Thank you. Commissioner Toyoka?
Well, I for one would like to hear from the Planning Commission, their thoughts on this. You know, because I think it's a double-edged sword, because, you know, well, the governing body, you know, yes, it's nice to have an advisory role or, you know, non-voting role, but in the truest sense, if the Planning Commission is going to be an advisor and make recommendations to the board, It's how do you do that, you know, on both sides of the coin? If you sit on as a part of the planning commission, how do you formulate an advisory role and a recommendation to the board that you also serve on? So like I said, that's where it's a double-edged sword, where being detached would be a good opportunity as well. And that's where I wanted the input of the planning commission and say, you know, how do they define, we've already defined roles and responsibilities. I think there would be too much overlap between the two. If you had a commissioner or planning department person on the advisory committee, that might be an overlap of roles and responsibilities.
Thank you, sir. Wearing two hats is always complicated, isn't it? Commissioner, planning chair, pardon me. You got the top hat, don't you? Thank you for your patience. Please let us know your ideas.
Thank you, Vice Chair Thompson. I just wanted to, so, you know, this is back in September, and so I don't have the sharpest memory of our conversation, but I think that, you know, I don't think the intent behind this, it's certainly not my language, I'll say, but the intent behind this was certainly not to exclude participation by the county commission, but I think just to meet state law around, you know, having that issue between appeals going to county commission and other you know, moving through the chain of decision making, just trying to avoid that conflict. And I'll just note that right now, county commissioners do attend our meetings and we welcome participation. So I personally would welcome a non-voting member from the county commission. I think it does encourage communication, and it also allows more information to be fed up to the larger body, because I know we're all busy and not every county commissioner can go to every sometimes very long and tedious planning commission meeting. So that allows another county commissioner to report back as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Planning Commissioner Ferrara, I see your hand. I thought I saw Planning Commissioner Johnson's hand too, but or maybe all want to speak. So I'm pretty happy to hear every single one of you. And so let me just call on you, Mr. Ferrara, right now.
A couple of things. I think I'm the one that proposed this rule, and it wasn't to exclude the Board of Commissioners from the meeting. In fact, I would, as our chair, our Planning Commission chair suggested, I would certainly welcome commissioners to attend those meetings. And now that it's going to be universally virtual, I would hope from time to time you would listen in, especially when it's not an application issue. I worry that if you're in the room when an application is being considered and then that has to go, is appealed, and it ends up going before you as a governing body to make the call, you've kind of entered into the bias area, I think, or ex parte kind of communication. And I think it would diminish your ability to take that higher level decision making that you must do from time to time. In fact, there's been a recent case where you made a land use decision, and so you don't want to be in the room when the planning commission's making that decision. I would think that if a liaison, or call them a non-voting member if you wish, but if it was understood that they would take seriously the split role and only engage in those kind of discussions that would add something to the overall planning kind of concept that the planning department is supposed to do. What is the future of our county and those kinds of things, or to bring to the attention of the planning commission overwhelming constituent concerns from your area might help direct us in how to think about things in a very helpful way. We don't get very many constituents at these meetings, unfortunately. So if a county commissioner came forward representing a large constituency and could tell us what their feelings are on something and why, that might really help. And well, I kind of lost my third point, whatever it was, so I won't take any more time and let another planning commissioner have the floor. Thank you for a chance to say a few
You're
things.
welcome. And let me just say, you're welcome to come back. I understand that. That's why I take notes to myself. But my understanding, and this is where county council needs to weigh in, ex parte contact is not prohibited. My understanding is it simply has to be announced. Any information gained has to be shared, and the commissioner has to declare whether or not they can give an unbiased opinion or make an unbiased decision. County council, am I accurate in that? Would you refine my thoughts, please?
Vice Chair Thompson, you are correct. Ex parte context is not prohibited as long as it's declared for the purposes of a decision. So folks can have an opportunity to refute the information that's been presented at, say, a planning commission if there was a land use decision in front of the planning commission. So yes, it can be addressed in that way. Thank you.
So, but I love your point about bringing constituent concerns. I see that as a very noble and worthwhile effort. So I really like hearing from that. So I don't know, Mr. Orr, Planning Commissioner Orr, are you, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw that. And apparently you're muted irrefutably. Oh, there you go. I see a green mic. Okay, good.
No, I have to support my head because it's so heavy. So I go like this or that. And so that should not be misconstrued as wanting to comment. When I want to comment, trust me, you will know for sure, for certain.
Thank you kindly. I'm pretty clear knowing you. This is the benefit of having been in community for a long time together. All right. Planning Commissioner Johnson, did you have a comment? Did I see your hand up?
Oh, I have a quick comment. Chris articulated my position pretty well. I really think that a liaison would be better, definitely non-voting, just because of the appeals process and how the appeals process works on a land use application. Being the county commission is the higher body, and let the process work. If there's an application coming through the planning commission, let it go through the planning commission, and then if it's appealed, it goes to the higher body. But it's important to have a liaison from the county commission at the same time. I think that's worked well in the past, and I like to see that continue.
Thank you. I'm going to amend your language a little bit. I'd like to see it resume because we haven't, well, it was 4 or 5 county managers back who eliminated that practice. So let me just say, as a member of the governing, having been a planning commissioner, having been a member of the governing body, my sense of the accountability of the governing body is we are directly accountable to the voters. You all are accountable to us. So in a way, we are your protection so that you can do your work free of, I want to say, coercion or attempts to influence you. Nobody can threaten your job because you're accountable to the governing body. The governing body, on the other hand, is directly and immediately, in the case of 3 of us, accountable to the voters. So we are the ones responsible, and we are the ones whose job performance is evaluated every time we go up for re-election. Because of that, my default position is the authority in these matters should reside with the governing body. More accountability, more direct accountability, more authority. So I wouldn't be in favor of adding this language. Mr. Fry, I hope you understand my logic in this. I fully appreciate what everyone is noting. This is a very complicated liaison that we're proposing, because I don't hear any objection to having a liaison from the County Board of Commissioners. We all want to be in accordance with the statute. We're all clear, there will be no vote. The question is it a member or is it a liaison position? The County Board of Commissioners, the governing body, hasn't deliberated on this issue per se. But since we're all agreed that it's mutually beneficial and serves the people of Clatsop County, if we have a liaison, I'm pretty sure that this will go on our bucket list, right? Director Henriksen, this will go on our bucket list so that we county commissioners support your good work. We communicate more effectively with you and are, again, directly accountable to the voters in this regard. So I think we've talked about this point, unless someone else has something else they want to say. Okay, good. So now let's talk about the difference between excused and unexcused absences. It seems to me that is Commissioner Bangs?
I agree that should be defined. It's defined in school districts, it's defined in jobs. It's just, it should be defined. Otherwise, I feel like it puts all of us in a potential pickle in the future. And so without a definition, there can be no decision. So
Pickles are good on sandwiches and otherwise to be avoided. That's what I'll say. All right. I trust that no one disagrees with that. Okay, fine. Term limits. The governing body proposed term limits. The planning commissioners are saying, well, but we'd rather not have term limits. We'd rather have more definition in term limits. Let me just hold the question and say, let the county commissioners talk about what we mean by term limits before we go into this. Let's have greater clarity on that. So skip over that for now. In terms of the difficulty of recruiting volunteers, we commissioners got an email this morning that said we are going to have a public affairs official very soon at Clatsop County. I see that as having a direct, positive, and extensive impact on volunteer participation all over Clatsop County. So again, I'd urge some patience in this regard, because what we're hoping is to have good input from you in how public affairs can go forward to get greater community involvement. Your bylaws specify that you are the citizen involvement body in Clatsop County. We may look at how that role that you have plays into this new position that we have for public affairs, because that's, as I understand it, a broader, more inclusive, more in-depth process to engage our citizens constructively with the governance. So again, I'd urge patience on that one. The procedure to replace a chair. Director Henriksen, can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, there was some general discussion about what procedure the Planning Commission would use if for some reason the chair was not able to complete their term. And some of that is already spelled out, that it's if the chair is unable to serve, whether temporarily or permanently, then the vice chair becomes the chair. And then at that point, you would need to elect a new vice chair if you wanted. And then come our normal election time, there would be the standard election at the beginning of the calendar year of the chair and vice chair positions. So I think that one we have ironed out, unless there's some other questions or concerns from the Planning Commission members that I'm not aware of.
I don't see any, and I don't see any county commissioner looking with consternation at this. So we're going to have greater clarity. And of course, you're subject to public meetings law. There are some publicly elected bodies that don't see themselves that way, but you're very good on that. And we talked about hybrid. Okay. Have we completed this item, Director Henriksen?
Yes, except we will need to come back to the term limit and discussion with the board at a different work session. But in the meantime, staff will add a definition of excused versus unexcused. And my understanding is the board wants to have more discussion about the liaison appointments. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think that characterizes it. Well,
Excuse me, may I?
sure.
We skipped one of these. We skipped the appointment dates. And I have great sympathy for this issue because we face the same issue on the board, in fact, when elections are held in often many months before changes actually occur. And I can certainly sympathize with the issue that because we have staggered term limits, which I think is a very good thing on the Planning Commission, that I'd really like to honor the request from the Planning Commission to perhaps change the date of the appointment of the chair to be in the month of July.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. So Commissioner Toyoka, what's your position on that?
No, that's fine. Aligning the dates, like Commissioner Webb said, would be fine.
Perfect. Commissioner Banks?
I don't see an issue with it. I think instinctually, though, it takes some time to get your bearings when you first enter a new group of service or a new situation. And I mean, I'm not against, the month of July, but sometimes allowing at least a month of relationship building is good. But honestly, if this is what the Planning Commission wants, I'm not against it.
And I see both of those concerns. What I will, in terms of the county commissioners, we are generally elected in May. Sometimes we are elected in November. I was elected once in September in a special election. So it can happen at other times, and that relationship building and that getting your feet on the ground and learning what the job is, there is usually some kind of interim period, either between May and July or between September, usually November and January, that allows for that. And you know what? If the Planning Commission wants it to be July, I don't have any objection to that. See how it works and let us know if you want to change it back. So that works. That works. Thank you for calling that to my attention. All right, now are we ready to go on to the next issue, which is Planning Commission appointments? Okay, page 3132 of our.
Sorry, Vice Chair.
Here
Sorry,
you
it's
are.
hard to
Just
see me
wave
with
at
my hand up in this big, big line of cubes here. I just wanted to add one bullet or add on to the top bullet. First of all, we won't go back into the July 1st thing, but I think as part of our discussion around the bylaws, and I just want to reiterate this, and I think we should just, y'all should, make your decisions at this point. We belabored the point, but the first bullet there about under general discussion is our discussion about the difficulty of recruiting volunteers to fill the commission seats. But the other part of that is the steep learning curve for the Planning Commission, and especially understanding our land use goals and our ordinances. I myself have been on the board for many years or several years now, and I'm still certainly learning, and I am so thankful for our staff to be able to support us in that. But it definitely, I think that's one of the things that we worry about as a group, that, that if, we lose people with longer term knowledge, they've built up that information in their minds and are able to provide it to all of us, those of us who are newer to the board. And so if they leave after 8 or 10 years, then we might have that knowledge gap. And so I think those 2 points are the most important, I think, for us to emphasize. And thank you for that.
Thank you, and thank you for raising that issue. I remember the Scandinavian term, there's no bad weather, there's only inadequate clothing. So I would say in terms of learning how to do a job, there is no job that's too complicated that an adequate training and preparation shouldn't prepare us to perform. And so the onus is on county staff or the state or the county commissioners or the planning commissioners to prepare and integrate adequate information. I think to have the balance between institutional knowledge and new blood, because I've served with both kinds of planning commissioners. Some planning commissioners come in with an experience in public service and in discerning matters of public law and public governance that allow them to quickly pick up. Other people have different kinds of skill bases, life experiences that they bring to the Planning Commission. I think our challenge is to include and to train up both kinds or all kinds of commissioners. My concern is that sometimes people can think because they have put in absolutely wonderful years of devoted service, dedication, institutional knowledge, learning base, that makes them the only voice. We have to listen to all voices, and that's why I referred to the efforts of our new staff that's going to be public affairs, that's going to have a more profound effect of bringing more people in so that they can become more expert in matters of governance. I hear your concern. I think we have to address those concerns. But I think we also have to look for the balance of integrating the skilled, experienced members with the incomers, because that's a reality test and a learning curve for everybody. My concern is that those who've been there for a longer period of time may not be willing to look at changes, and we all have to be willing to look at changes. Not always easy, but we are adapting to change all the time and integrating people into our change efforts. And that's kind of the other perspective on that. Planning Chair Gardner, how does that make sense to you or not?
I'll just leave what I said as my comment. Thank you.
Sure thing. And good people can differ, so thank you for that. Okay. And thank you for helping me see you. I know I've got to change, as Commissioner Webb said, to go to the active cameras. Easier now. Thank you. You know what? I should make that a default. Planning Commissioner Farrar, you had a point, I think?
Yes, just really quickly on the issue of how many terms one can serve. I guess the part I don't quite understand is ultimately the Board of Commissioners will appoint the person based on the choices they have in applicants. And so maybe it could be generally understood that the Board of Commissioners is always going to be looking to possibly bring somebody new on board. And it's not saying anything bad about a planning commissioner that may have served one or more terms. It's just saying we'd like to shake things up a little bit. We might like to bring in some new blood and so on. But the choice is yours. And so I don't really see a need in making it mandatory that someone leave. In fact, I think the way it's written right now, it allows for some extraordinary circumstance you might reappoint somebody even though they've gone over their term. Why not just leave it at, we're going to look at all applicants and we may want somebody new, or we may really think that this person stays with the times and wants to serve more, and it would, at this point in time, be beneficial to the overall planning commission. So I'll leave it at that.
As always, thoughtful comments. Thank you. Thank you. So we're still thinking about that, I guess. and we'll go forward. Okay. So John, you are wanting to speak now. Is that it? Okay, please.
Yes, I would say that I oppose any way of construing this proposed bylaw as a meaning of lifetime ban. I'm certainly sensitive to the idea of getting new blood, but the practical reality, as I see it, and others have voiced, is that it's difficult to get people to volunteer, and it's difficult to get qualified, involved people with the time to put in what is required. It's even harder because of that. And I know that, week after week, I have 3 meetings this month, and one of them took like 6 or 7 hours. And it's that's something to think about, is because we've had for I think approaching a year, 2 vacancies, and the line between quorum, no quorum is thin indeed. So we need to consider, or the board, I should say, needs to consider the potential consequences of drawing restrictions on members. If somebody, I'm also sensitive to sort of the political indelicacy of having to just fire somebody or thank them for their service and send them on their merry way. I'm sensitive to that. But the 2 terms is probably workable. But if somebody wants to come back, I think they should be allowed to. Thanks.
Political indelicacy. What an elegant phrase. Thank you. I'm going to remember that. So, so there are considerations on both sides, and always the overriding commitment is to the public service, the value for the people of Clatsop County. So as we're united in this common goal and this common value, we'll look for the best way to implement it. I'm grateful for the fruits of your thoughts this morning. Thank you, colleagues, all. So now are we ready to go on? Is everyone had their say? Pam, Commissioner Webb?
Well, I just kind of I guess a point of order. Are we going to talk about these 4 items that are in the staff report, or are we going to ignore them and move on, or what? I mean, what's our process here?
Okay, so we've just been talking about them. What is it that you're looking for that you didn't see already?
Well, I guess I'm sorry. I just expected that we would talk about each. And I will say at this time that I think that before us today is proof that there are qualified people out there willing to serve. I don't think it's such a dearth of talent. And so I'm not doing lamentations over the absence of qualified people. I think we have I think we have a lot of very qualified people. The other issue that I'm sorry we didn't talk about before, and that is the whole issue that of the urban-rural balance on the Planning Commission. I believe that one of the most critical things facing Clatsop County in the coming years is the urbanization of rural areas. And that is going to take enormous cooperation between the cities and the county. And so to limit the number of people who actually live in urban areas, I think is disenfranchising a very large percent of our population from being members of the Planning Commission. And I'm not sure I understand the state law in this area. Gail, is that a state issue that precludes members from urban areas?
No, that is not in the ORS. The ORS does specifically limit the number of Planning Commission members to either 5, 7, or 9. The board, however, could choose by ordinance to change that requirement, but there is no limitation on how many incorporated persons can be on an unincorporated planning commission.
Okay, thank you. And that's one of the reasons that I was also very much in support of expanding the members of the Planning Commission, because we have, especially in our rural areas of the county, we have several different communities of interest. And we certainly heard when we did the survey of our citizens about redistricting, that the community of interest is very strong among our citizens. And some of those areas are very vocal and very well organized, and others aren't. And so I don't think we should preclude those people in those other areas from being on the commission. I'm not sure that I remember us ever taking a vote about expanding the Planning Commission. Could somebody correct me on that if I'm wrong?
We're discussing it now. If it comes to a vote, we'll do that later. And I appreciate your point about the increasing urbanization in the county. My point of view is if there are areas that need to incorporate, and I have one in mind particularly, then we could expand the Planning Commission at that point. So for me, it's a if-then issue, because I see the trends that you're pointing to, and I think we have to be ready to deal with them. In the meantime, my interest is in fortifying the county commission, the county planning commission, to be more reflective of the concerns of the unincorporated areas, with the greatest possible respect and credence given to the representatives from the urban areas. But I'm willing to keep discussing this. So we only discuss in the work sessions, then the staff is better able to prepare for us possible courses of action and their costs and consequences for our regular meetings, which is when we make motions and take votes. So that's my process clarification. I hope that clarifies for you and answers your concerns. So, Planning Chair Gardner, I see your hand is up. Thank you.
I recognize that we want to move on here because we have limited time, but just a note on that. I'm supportive of your position on that I feel like it should certainly be a majority unincorporated representation. If we were going to add more incorporated representation, I would ask you to consider more diversity in those cities that are represented. I note, well, I'm the only person on the committee from Southwest, and Seaside is also a big incorporated community down here. And so, in my experience, almost everybody from incorporated areas on the Planning Commission have always been from Astoria. So to me, if you were going to expand it, it wouldn't be proper representation if all 3 members were from Astoria. It would be great if there was some diversity in that representation as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, from my point of view. Commissioner Bangs, I see your hand up.
I would agree with that assessment. I would hesitate, though, to expand to 9 members, just because I feel like the higher the number of members in the Planning Commission, or really any committee, leads to even longer meetings and even longer sessions and even longer deliberations. And we want to be able to be efficient with our time and efficient with our committees. And I want our committees to feel like that they can be efficient also and successful. And so I feel like if we stretch that number out to more, I feel like we start, as my dad always said, too many hens in the hen house. We just have to limit that. But in regards to potentially increasing our incorporated numbers, you know, I will always want our unincorporated to have a larger voice in a planning county, in a planning commission, just because as a county, we're talking about those who are in incorporated areas, they have a city council to help represent them. They have a mayor, they have other resources. We are it for our unincorporated areas. And so we need to be very careful to make sure that we represent them well, because they don't have other representation.
We're the only game in town. Yeah, you see me nodding my head. Sorry, I'm supposed to be objective, but I'm part of this as well. That whole issue between objective and subjective that we referenced about the function of the county commissioner on the planning commission, it arises every time, doesn't it? So here's again what I point to. We're going to have a public affairs person who will come on to the extent that we can partialize the work that the planning, I mean, y'all have carried the whole burden for Clatsop County's citizen participation in so many ways for so long. And that burden in some ways has become onerous. So let's work together to take a look at all of the community participation that needs to happen. And let's look for the most efficient, most effective way to do it. Let's look for how to use our scholars. Let's look for how to use our working class people. Let's look for how we bring in folks from all over the county. You know, I drove once to see Sam and Myrna Patrick. It was 2 hours. It was 2 hours from my part of the world to their part of the world. It's a lot of territory to cover. And the fact that we are using virtual reality now does part of that, as long as folks have that access. So Lam, I haven't heard from you. Do you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
Well, I'm so new to this. I'm still learning in this whole process. But yeah, I think at first I was thinking that I was kind of agree with Commissioner Webb that we need more commissioners, planning commissioners from the city. But the more I hear that we don't have representation out in the rural community, and again we don't have enough people at this moment. We only have 4, and I'm wondering where the people are coming from to serve on the planning board. And I know for my position that I have a business to run. I have 2 kids, and the meetings become quite take up a lot of time. And you probably can see that I'm sitting in the car right now because I'm running around and trying to keep up with all the demands of the meetings. But yeah, in saying that, I do feel like I am needed, and I will do as much as I can. So yeah, so that's my thought on that.
Thank you. That's extremely helpful. This is why I'm saying that the public affairs person can help us with this. We can look at the whole domain of public participation. We can look at the kinds of issues that are raised. We can look for diversity of all kinds, geographic, cultural, financial, all of that, and design systems and programs that allow everyone to be heard in a way that works for them and their lives, so that the planning commission, which has a decision-making authority, and the governing body all are enriched, and we better represent the needs, the concerns, the values of everybody in Clatsop County. I think that's our common goal. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, I bored you to tears. Okay, fine. Anything more to be heard on this issue? Okay, I don't see anybody talking to me. So Director Henriksen, to page 3132. Talk to us about this, please.
Okay, well, staff does not have much to say on this. This is really for your board and the Planning Commission. I understand and attended your January 14th meeting, first one you had for your strategic plan goal setting for fiscal year 22-23. And that strategic plan will also be used to develop the work plan for community development during that fiscal year, and in turn, also some of the work of the Planning Commission. So I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion to understand what your board sees as the role of the Planning Commission and staff in implementing and or developing that strategic plan.
Nothing complicated. Yeah, kidding. Well, Commissioner Webb, this is kind of your bailiwick. Do you want to have something to say about this?
Yes, I do. I think that it's always a challenge for a representative ruling board to acknowledge that, especially in this county, we have a strong county manager form of government. And the county manager directs the personnel and the work of all of the departments of the county. And it's unique that we have as robust an advisory group to a department as we do in planning. And part of that is because of state law, and part of it is because of the quasi-judiciary components of planning in the state of Oregon. So I would definitely defer to the county manager in terms of how he and his senior staff implement the strategic plan of the board. Some of the components of our strategic plan are planning related. And I believe that it's up to the county manager, who I see has just logged on, so I will stop there.
Timing is everything, County Manager. Thank you, Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb, Chair Thompson, Chair Gardner, members of the Planning Commission and board. I've been listening. I've just been multitasking. Sorry about that. I would say that, you know, part of the genesis of the strategic planning process was to make sure that the work of staff is really germane to the priorities of the governing body as well as the priorities of the community. And so I really see strategic planning as a co-production process with a lot of different inputs. And then as we execute it, there's a lot of different hands into the execution. As I think the county realizes on so many topics is that we don't do anything alone. Almost everything we do requires participation, input, special knowledge from a whole wide array of folks from the community. And so what I would say is that we're in the very beginning of the process for 22-23. You know, the board's going to be looking at the outcome of the survey that was done to our boards and commissions and to our department directors and other stakeholder groups. And we'll get through that process. But I would say that there will be some things that will be on the Planning Commission's list of interesting topics where your input will be valuable. And there may be even certain, you know, code amendments and things that will come out for affordable housing and some of those other topics, and the environment, obviously. So, you know, what I really hope is that we can just integrate this process into how we do things so that the Planning Commission feels heard as we go through the planning process, and then there's follow-up as we work through implementation. So, you know, I think it's on us to make that whole process work, but that's what the intention is. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, County Manager, I think about this kind of thing often. I really appreciate your comments. As I was getting ready for today's meeting, I took a few notes. I mean, so those of us who are the gray hairs here may have grown up with the phrase, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. In my mind, when we're dealing with governance, we're dealing with 5 R's. We're dealing with rules, roles, responsibilities, relationships, and resources. Because I have a one-word description of what the county manager just elucidated. It's teamwork. So teamwork takes defining the rule. What's the legal authority? It takes defining the role. What's your job title? It takes defining the responsibility. What's your job description? What are the tasks and the conditions of satisfactions for performing those tasks? The responsibility. The relationship. Who talks to whom? Who's engaged with whom? Because we do a lot of teamwork, all of us in our daily lives, particularly as county commissioners, particularly as planning commissioners. So it's wonderful that we're having this meeting this morning so that we have more robust relationships with each other. That really bodes well for good county governance. And then resources, who has the money and who has the social capital. So we county commissioners go looking for resources and skill sets to bring into Clatsop County. That's the reason I go to AOC. Who's got the money? How do we get it here doing what we need to have it do for people in Clatsop County? So teamwork based on rules, roles, responsibility, relationships, and resources. That's what I have to say is what we're about. And for me, that's the distilled essence of this strategic planning process. So county manager, did that make sense to you?
Yes, it does to me, Chair Thompson.
Okay, thank you. So that's my first reality check. Okay, does anybody else have any response to that? Does that make a sense as a framework for going forward, that we're really looking how to do teamwork with each? Okay, good. Okay, good. And those are the dimensions that we look at as we do our planning, as we do our execution, because the other part is we are going to fail. We are going to succeed and we are going to fail. How do we discern which is which? And that is that we have a trusting relationship with each other. So you, as the planning commission, come to the county board and you say, well, okay, here's what we see is working well. Here's what we see needs improvement. And we, as the county commissioners, give you that same respect, give you that same honor by doing that with you. But we are a team as we go forward for the people in the place here. And the rest is details. Okay, so John, or you're nodding. Does that make sense to you? Okay, good. Just checking if you're nodding at me or somebody else. Okay, so Chris, you look agreeable. Chair Gardner, you look agreeable. Lime, does that make sense to you? Okay. Carrie, how about you? Okay, good. Okay, Director Henriksen, what do you have to say? Does that make sense to you? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So commissioners, colleagues, what do you think? Does that put in some definition of the territory that we're covering and what we want to do as we're covering it? Commissioner Bangs, what do you think?
I am good. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Webb, where'd you go?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Commissioner Toyoka, you're good. Okay, fine. All right. Now, Director Henriksen, can you take us forward in talking about these candidates?
Yes, I can, Chair. We have 2 vacant openings on the Planning Commission. We have received, as of the date your agenda package was prepared, we have received 6 applications. We had 1 more submitted following our application or our submittal deadline for this agenda item, and that application is from Jackson Ross, who is a resident of Incorporated Astoria. The board, as we discussed a little bit earlier this morning, had a work session on December 1st to look at the Planning Commission applicants, and at that time wanted to defer until the county completed its redistricting process, which was done on January 12th. And then the board has also requested that we schedule some time with the Planning Commission applicants so that you have an opportunity to meet them, everyone to introduce themselves, and to have some general discussions. And at this time, a date for that meeting has not yet been scheduled. But really, this is just an opportunity for anyone to ask questions about scheduling or process, and so that we all understand where we're at in the recruitment. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, colleagues? Commissioner Bangs.
Would a surveyor be considered buying, selling, or developing of real estate for profit, like principally engaged in that process, or would they, like, I guess, how are we defining this person's job as a surveyor? Does he do land surveys? Is he doing road engineering? What is he doing? I don't know. I mean, if he's building road, I don't think that it is part of, I guess I'm just looking for a description for that particular job so that we know our limitations when we're selecting our two new planning commission members.
So my knowledge of the applicant that's in this batch of applications is that this person does primarily land surveying, and usually for commercial purposes. So that would be considered development of land.
That is to say, not construction.
It's not physical construction, but it is still part of the development of land.
Okay.
Which I believe, yeah, developing of real estate for profit. And so this particular person, and I can speak because this person used to be on our planning commission, does work with, for example, there's a hotel coming in Astoria, and that person was involved in some of the survey work there. So that would be development of real estate for profit.
So would that would not exceed the limit on that particular occupation, or it would? Just help me clarify that.
It would not at this point, but we just need to be cognizant of that because that one is specifically in state statute, and that one we cannot change.
Got it. That's very clear. Somebody had a hand up. Who was it? Commissioner Toyoka, thank you.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to ask Director Henriksen, how fast can these interviews or this, discussions with the applicants take place? I mean, they've had their applications in for quite some time. And with all due respect to the current members of the Planning Commission, we would like to seat them so they can easily have quorums, do their work. So how can we compress this to get these applicants, from applicant status, choose a few, get them on the board and help the Planning Commission fill those vacancies? How fast can we make this happen?
Well, we can schedule a meeting with, I think, 24 or 48 hours notice, but we can make it happen very quickly. I have been working with the county manager's office. We're obviously balancing a lot of different obligations and staff time, commissioner time, applicant time to be able to pull everything together and still give you enough time with the applicants to have meaningful discussion. So we will continue to work and get that date set as quickly as we can.
I really appreciate that. I'm with Commissioner Toyoka, if I hear him correctly. This is a #1 priority. Could we do this on a Saturday? Sorry, but could we do this on a Saturday? Would that make it easier to get it done right now?
From staff, yeah, we can certainly make it happen on a Saturday.
Colleagues, generally speaking, colleagues, I would love to schedule this for this Saturday if this were possible, to move this forward, to have those interviews. Is there anyone who is precluded from participating this coming Saturday? You? Okay, fine. You're pretty.
We're doing short-term rentals at 10 o'clock in the morning. We have our third short-term rental town hall. We can certainly do it after that, but it would be nice to maybe split them up.
How could I forget that, since that's my primary consideration? But yes, Saturday afternoon, not Saturday morning. Thank you. Commissioner Webb?
No, I was just going to remind you of that.
Thank you both. You know what? Thank you. Saturday afternoon. Okay, so Saturday afternoon. Okay. If we can go forward and schedule these for Saturday afternoon after that community meeting, that give us an hour between, okay, to walk around and shake out the kinks. And we'll hope that the candidates could be available then to the extent.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt. Our meeting is scheduled to 11:30. Do we want to say 1 p.m.?
Yes, please, 1 p.m. So 1 p.m. Saturday. Let's get this thing moving. Okay, Commissioner Banks.
I'm just going to lobby that this not be this Saturday. I'm involved in 2 basketball tournaments with my children, but if we must, we must. I am not, I can definitely step away, but I want to be able to give this my full, I agree. This is hard. I agree that this needs to be expedited, but I also have already committed to 2 tournaments with my kids. So yeah.
I understand. So then that comes to next Saturday. Planning commissioners, you see that we want to honor your need as expeditiously as possible. I'm grateful for your patience as we've kind of chewed through all of these changes. And I've been a tournament mom. I understand that. Mr. Farrar, talk to me.
It does seem like holding this meet and greet just 3 or 4 days from now is awfully short notice to the candidates. And I think if you could possibly make it the next Saturday, that would give people a lot more opportunity. I also wondered whether it's going to be virtual or try to do it in person. And doing it within 2 weeks, that's really fast. And I think the Planning Commission overall would really support you on doing it that quickly.
Okay. So we will look to be both expeditious, flexible, and give enough time for people to respond to the invitation. It has to be virtual. It can't be anything else right now with the COVID stats and all of that. Okay, well, good. Only 1 meeting on Saturday. You can hide that smile, but I see it too. All right. So let me look at that calendar. So that is in fact January 29th. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. January 29th.
Okay. And do you want to keep it at 1 in the afternoon, or do you want to bump it up to earlier in the morning?
Colleagues, what's your pleasure? Do you want 10 in the morning or do you want 1 in the afternoon? Pick one. Pam, Commissioner Banks?
I prefer morning.
10 a.m. then. Commissioner Webb, I saw you said that either worked for you. Anybody for whom that's a problem for 10 a.m.? Oh, yay, hooray. So the thing that I noticed, I want to celebrate the achievement of the moving of this process. What I see when I look at the current Planning Commission members in terms of diversity, we as a County Board of Commissioners have traditionally wanted to have a Planning Commission equally balanced among the commissioner districts. That isn't what we have right now. And let me throw you a curveball over the plate, Director Henriksen. Have you considered how to adjust the commissioner districts once the districts have changed and how they impact the planning commissioners residence district? Have you done that?
I'm not sure I quite understand your question, Chair, but I think if I understood, you're asking, have we redrawn our planning area boundaries to combine the 6 into 5 to be coterminous with your commissioner districts? Is that correct?
And the new commissioner districts? Because remember, we just changed them, right?
Right. So, but there will still only be 5 commissioner planning districts, and we have 6 planning areas, so they would have to be redrawn. We
Right.
have not done that. I will say that as staff, I have a little bit of a concern in that some of the commissioner boundaries are very incorporated with no rural areas, and then they may not have a planning area to be represented. But that if that's a direction of the commission, then staff will move forward with redrawing those boundaries.
Well, okay, so here's my idea, and I'd like to hear from everybody weighing in on this one. My idea is that we say to staff, please revise this chart to reflect the new commissioner districts and the new planning areas, so that going forward, we can look at what kind of geographical diversity we're representing on the planning commission as we go forward. Because right now there are 3 in District 3, but that commissioner district has changed. So perhaps that can be something that staff works on and distributes to us under separate cover in the interim after this meeting before we interview people. Is that workable?
Yes, Chair, we can do that.
Okay. Because I think we want to consider that. We want to honor every part equally. Planning Chair Gardner.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. I just wanted to point out that in the bylaws talk about remaining members shall be residents of the various geographic areas of the county. And if you look at the, the way that it's represented on this chart, it's split up by commissioner districts. But if you look at, say, District 3, if you're looking at Farrar and Quang, those 3 people live in very different areas, actually, of the county in terms of like their experience. And so though they're in the same district, I would say, I really value their different perspectives that they bring to the commission. And I think they do represent some diversity, even though they're in that one particular political boundary, which is very different than when you're looking at communities and experiences. And I think we've talked about this before, like, the Southwest is this ginormous district because there's so few people in some areas of it. But, Jewel is very different than Arch Cape Falcon Cove Beach, which is very different from just outside of Seaside city limits. And so, I ask you to just keep an eye on the bylaws and, what geographical diversity really is versus what the districts are.
Thank you for raising that point. I appreciate it very much. I saw Commissioner Webb had a hand up. Let me just respond to that. We might need 2 elements to the chart. One is the geographical area and the other is the commissioner district. But the other possibility is that the bylaws need to reflect what our reality is as we go forward as a governing body. So there's that tension between those 2 elements. Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, given the reconfiguration of districts, Commissioner Kwong will no longer be in District 3. And I'm not sure about the nuances of the other districts, but I do know that in District 3, there will be virtually nothing but the city of Astoria. So those outside the district things will all, that, in fact, I think that it will be in District 4.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. But then the question becomes for the prospective, the applicants, where are they? And And again, the issue is, should the bylaws of the Planning Commission, what weight do they have as the county commissioners look at this? So having two considerations, I mean, traditionally, I've only seen the commissioner district use, but I've only been in Clatsop County 20 years, 20 some. So it maybe was done differently long ago, but not in the near distant past. If we're looking at geographical district, yeah, it's different. Any other comments, concerns, considerations, points to be raised for this? Okay then, are we ready to move on? Can this be so easy? Can we move on to the comprehensive plan update process on page 48 of our packet? Okay then.
All right, thank you, Chair. The process is moving along. Back in June, the board approved the use of a new schedule, which put us on an expedited time frame and sort of redivided the work differently. The planning area citizen advisory committees worked from August through December and completed their review and updates of their local community plans. And those will be coming to your board at work sessions on February 2nd and February 16th for some initial review. Also, as part of our realignment of work, we have been holding joint meetings with the countywide Citizen Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission. And you'll have heard some of our Planning Commission members talk about those meetings. Those are the 6-hour meetings that they are working through. We have fallen a bit behind our schedule. We had a joint Planning Commission meeting in December with the countywide Citizen Advisory Committee. We did not have a quorum at that meeting, so we had to reschedule for January 7th, and not all of the work was completed on January 7th. So that has pushed us about a month behind on their agenda. We are looking now at completing the work of the joint Planning Commission countywide CAC in May. I suspect that schedule will get pushed back maybe a month or two more as we move forward, just to let the board be aware of that. I want to talk a little bit about Goal 10. The board did have a first work session on Goal 10, which is our housing goal, on December 1st, and there was a lot of discussion. I know in particular Commissioner Webb had several items of concern that she noted during that work session, and so we are making some revisions to that goal, and we'll bring it back to your board on March 2nd for another work session, and then move that forward to the Planning Commission in May, hopefully. I also want to talk about goals 16, 17, and 18, which are estuarine resources, coastal shorelands, and beaches and dunes. And staff is considering putting out a request for proposals, an RFP, to look at a consultant to complete that work. 16, 17, and 18 are very complex goals. They cover obviously our shorelines, our estuaries, and our beach and dune areas, which also contain a lot of what are called enforceable policies. And enforceable policies are policies that are drafted in a very specific manner so that as federal projects come in to our area, they can be used by the county and by the state and obviously the federal government to make sure that our comprehensive plan and the project are consistent with each other. And so we do that as part of the coastal zone management program, and that's a very strong part of how we enforce our comprehensive plan requirements onto federal projects when they come in. And so it is very important that we do take some time and have that done correctly. Having said that, however, we talked with the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and they are recently doing some work in the southern part of the state and updating an estuary management plan so one of these cities there can update their own goal 16, 17, 18. They're estimating that that process, redeveloping the estuary plan and then updating our goals, could be up to or maybe more than $150,000, and that work might take about 2 years to complete. So right now, staff has not drafted an RFP. We have talked about it. We've considered it. It is a lot of money, and so we're looking at other options to see what our best course forward is. But I did want to make everyone aware that that is a possibility that may be open for consideration in the future, but we're still working on the best path forward to update those 3 goals. And those 3 goals will likely track separately in terms of revisions, review, and approvals. And so that would be separate from the schedule that you all approved with back in June of this year. 2 other things, and then I will stop speaking. But I wanted to touch on community participation and public input. And as Chair Thompson noted, the county is in the process of interviewing and hiring a public affairs officer who would help with our public outreach on many different projects. And so, especially since COVID started, we have had a very challenging time with having public participation at our meetings. Even though they're virtual now, we don't always see the attendance that we would sometimes get at in-person meetings, especially, and I'm not going to pick on Commissioner Banks' district, but I know that internet is a challenge in that part of the community. But I know when we had our in-person meetings at the Napa Fire Station, we usually had a pretty good turnout. And when we moved to a virtual setting, we had very little public participation, even though the meetings were held at the same time and same dates. So it's definitely been challenging. We as staff have increased our advertising venues. We continue to post through social media. We're on the county's website. We're on our calendar. We put in all our meeting dates every week into our weekly update that is put out. But it's just been challenging. So we have a meeting set up next Monday, January 24th, to meet with Oregon's Kitchen Table. And they are the same organization that did the public outreach for the redistricting that the board just went through. And so we're going to be talking to them about putting together an outreach program for us, because we're reaching that point now where, you know, we're almost through with our initial reviews. We're going to start moving in summertime into adoption mode, hopefully. But in between, we definitely want to make sure that we're getting input from the public. So that is one thing we'll be moving forward with. And then finally, as we restarted our meetings in August last year after our pause, we've had concerns that have been raised by committee members who have expressed, their thoughts about the accelerated schedule, the time frame allowed or approved to meet their deadlines and complete their work, and also about the quality of work that's being produced. And they have asked several times that the time frame be extended to complete our comp plan update process. And so I'm just putting that on the table for discussion. That is everything I have for my report, but I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Colleagues, questions, comments, responses? Well, let me say I'm in favor of splitting off this community participation and public input to Oregon's Kitchen Table. I think there's subject matter experts. That ties in also with goals 16, 17, and 18, as our county planning staff already had a formidable workload. And this whole public participation effort, the minute nature of the housekeeping you've been doing to clean up the statute, oh my goodness, I can't imagine the patience and the time and effort that's taken. So I would be in favor of splitting this off and getting subject matter experts to manage this. I want to bring in 2 related but tangential elements. One is Lcdc is forming a task force to revise Oregon's land use laws. I got the application from AOC. I was cleaning out my inbox. Oh, whoops, I have to apply for this because the deadline was Monday at 11:59. So I applied to be part of it. I don't know whether I will be allowed to be part of it or not, but I applied, and that effort will go forward. The other thing is when I went to the coal pack meeting, we had a report from Sarah Absher from Tillamook County that talked about FEMA being weaponized to enforce the NOAA, the fishing folk, the federal fishing folk, their dictates about floodplain areas. And the concern was that if jurisdictions did not comply with FEMA imposed rules developed to be universal across the United States, that any kind of development, redevelopment, or maintenance inside those floodplain areas would be next to impossible. And the result would be that much of our county would be reduced essentially to parkland because it couldn't be used for residential or business purposes because of the constraints that would be imposed with the weaponized FEMA. So Director Henriksen, am I exaggerating? I don't know if I got an inflammatory presentation, but that was the impact of what I heard last week at Colpack.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Tillamook County Director was talking about the rules that are going to be coming out of the biological opinion that FEMA did, if that was what she was referring to, because that I am familiar with, and there are some potentially very big changes coming down the road over the next 5 years. So I'm not sure if it was that. I haven't heard of anything else, but
That was the issue. Her description, as I said, it was like heart-stopping for me when she said, you know, people would not be able to put gravel on their roads because it would impact the waters. You know, so if you had a pothole or a road, you wouldn't be able to maintain it. And that was simply one example. Can you speak to that a little bit, your understanding of it, so I have a nuanced perspective?
yeah, so it's been probably a month since I read through the proposed plan that has come forward, but there are a couple of different paths that the county can go forward, and I don't remember them specifically. But I do know that there are some very big changes proposed in terms of how you subdivide property that may prohibit subdivision or partitioning of property if any portion of it is in a floodplain. And honestly, I don't want to speak too much about it because I don't remember all of it off the top of my head. I wasn't prepared to really talk about this, but I think it is something that we would like to schedule for a work session with the board, because the board will have to make a decision about which path forward we're going to take, whether we just follow a model ordinance that comes down from the state, or we do the consultant work to develop our own plan, and then there's a third path forward that I don't quite remember what it is, but definitely I can work with the county manager's office to schedule a work session on that.
Thank you. I didn't, and I apologize because I did spring that. It only happened last Thursday, and so we've been pretty hectic since then. To the extent possible, I'd like to include our planning commission in these deliberations because I think this relates so closely to our joint work that they are informed and involved as we go forward. This is a big decision, and I don't want to add to the workload, but to the extent that the planning commissioners have interest and capacity to be involved, I'd like them to at least hear what we're talking about.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think we welcome any planning related work as we've discussed over the years. So I think the comp plan is big on our plate right now, but we welcome collaboration with the board on issues like this one.
Thank you. Okay, so apologies, you can chastise me later. I don't usually spring things on staff, but that came to mind as we looked at these things. And the other thing is, in regard to the work of the citizen advisory committees, I've listened to these meetings, and there are so many dedicated people who have spent so much time and effort. My concern has been with what I've perceived as the scope creep involved, and the degree to which the work has expanded beyond the originally contemplated scope. So I think for myself, I want us to continue to wrap this up, to use what's been done, because there's lots of very good work. I want to use what's been done, but I'm eager to, I want to say, make the workload of the staff, the planning commissioners, and our citizen land use advisors more reasonable, and to complete this segment, and to then look at it, look at how we can go forward, learning from it and using it to the greatest benefit, again, for the people and the place, Clatsop County. So Commissioner Webb, do you have a response to that or another idea? Okay, anybody else with anything to say? Okay, fine. This is another planning Commissioner Farrar.
One real quick thing that came up way early in the meeting, I think it was Commissioner Tayoka that brought up the idea of the importance of these virtual access to meetings for the public to be able to attend. And I really agree with that, and I'm glad the state made it a law. But I'm just wondering if we can make it even a little easier for people to participate in that meeting. We see it this morning in me raising my hand to get your attention, or giving a thumbs up and that kind of thing. Isn't there some way we can have more buttons at the bottom of our screens to press and raise a hand, and that somebody monitor who's got questions and put them in a queue? Because that would really facilitate the public really participating and feeling that they're not intruding at an inappropriate time, that they're in the queue to get their question asked. I wonder if somebody could look at that and try to improve that, because it's the wave of the future for meetings, I think.
I think you're right on that. Commissioner Webb?
Yes, last night, the city of Astoria, which uses Zoom, and I think all of us now are used to so many different kinds of meetings. And I have never particularly liked the GoToMeeting platform. But last night, the city of Astoria had a public hearing that was actually more of a dialogue between the city council and citizens. And there were over 60 people at one time on this meeting, and it was a Zoom meeting. And I think one of the things that people really like about Zoom is the hand raising. That if there's an actual button on the bottom that puts in front of your screen, whether you're on, whether your camera's on or not, that says, I want to say something or I want to ask a question. So if there's, I think that one of the ways that we can certainly improve in Clatsop County our public meeting process is by switching platforms, because I just think Zoom is so much more effective. And I've noticed in the various meetings that I attend that Zoom is becoming the preferred platform, and that it really is the best of all the ones I use. Thank you.
I've heard county IT express concerns about the security of Zoom. There are other platforms that do allow for that. There's Microsoft Teams, for example. And I've just discovered that the state of Oregon has in the Department of Administrative Services actually what I think are competent IT professionals, which is a welcome development in my book. So colleagues, all of your input is valued. All of your suggestions will be addressed in some fashion. You've been heard, you've been honored. I'm grateful for your participation this morning. Is there anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? Hearing nothing. Thanks again. Take care.